Okay, so very good afternoon to everyone. Very warm welcome to our fourth skill lab, which is on understanding legal and regulatory compliances for NGOs. Before we dive into this topic, let me briefly share the purpose of this skill lab. And under the broader initiative of catalyzing good governance and accountability system, ISTM has been working towards strengthening compliance practices for good governance through various offerings such as certificate programs in SPO governance and compliance management, skill lab like we have today, and sector focused knowledge resources. Now, these skill labs are basically the monthly webinars which focused on very specific topic with a unique feature of engaging with situational and nuanced questions that we receive from audience in advance. So you can visit our webpage to know the detail of our offerings under this initiative. I will request my team member if they have, they can paste the webpage link in the chat box. So for today's session, we are delighted to have two eminent speakers with us. First is uh, Mr. Harsh Jaitli. We welcome you. And he is the CEO of VANI, which is Voluntary Action Network India, for nearly 1.5 decades. And with his previous work experience of another 1.5 decade with Priya on capacity building, governance, health, and environmental sustainability. So it's like 3 decades. He is the founder and board member of FIDC, which is Forum for Indian Development Corporation, and has been a part of several national and international advisory committees. His vast experience speaks for itself. We welcome you, Harshi. The another eminent speaker we have is Ms. Ritu Jain. She is founder partner at ARIA CFO Services with deep expertise in finance and legal compliance. She is a chartered accountant, LLB and masters in taxation by qualification. She has worked with the over 500 nonprofits across India, delivering strategic financial management, compliance solutions, and capacity building support. She has also co-authored the True Cost Computation and Communication Guideline book. So we welcome you both. And let me also take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Garima Sharma, and I work with ISTM as a content manager. So here I design curriculum and develop content for various open programs. In my past experience, I have been into capacity building roles as a trainer, as a facilitator, and I have also developed various courses. And I have done my PhD in, I would say, it's understanding the acceptability and accessibility of Jan Suraksha schemes among Jan Dhan account holders. So we can start with our session. To keep this discussion structured, Ritu and Harshi, I have actually categorized our question based on the life cycle of an organization. So I'll start with section 1, which will have questions which we receive from our audience on the aspects of registration and tax exemptions. So Ritu, my question will be first to you. And we have seen that recently there has been a confusion around, if I talk about section 12A, so there has been confusion around section 12A, then 12AA, and now then 12AB. So could you help us understand what is the difference, and specifically when it comes to its validity or maybe the time frame of renewals?
Thank you, Dr. Garima. And also, I want to just thank ISTM for giving us this platform and making ourselves also available to the audience that is receiving this information. So thank you for that. Yes, as you mentioned, there is like 12A, 12AA, and 12AB. It does sound confusing, and it has taken a while for us also to concentrate on what is the most important thing here to focus on. So I think to begin with, let's concentrate on 12A. The section 12A has been in existence, which right from the beginning, where it gives you certain conditions based on which the an NGO can get exemption from income tax. So which normally, very commonly, it's said under section 11 and 12. So only section 12A will just tell you, okay, what are the conditions for which you can get the exemption, and that remains constant. What we need to understand was what is 12AA and what is 12AB. So 12AA, I think most of us have been aware of it. this was a registration in which they lay down the procedure under which an organization can get a 12A registration. This is the one which was given for lifetime. It was once granted, it was permanent. This 12AA section now has been replaced by section 12AB, and this is since April 2021. So, what's very important for organizations to now understand is the permanent status that we had before for an NGO to have this registration has gone away. And now it is time bound, it is for 5 years. So, when you apply for a registration, based on certain fulfillment of the conditions, you will get a registration for 5 years. And what's important here to know is that the rule is saying that you please apply for renewal before the expiry of 6 months of the registration period. Now, I want to break it down a little bit. Most of the people, most of the organizations, when this had come up in 2021, they had filed under Section 12AB and they had received the 5 years registration. I'm talking about people who were already in existence and they had applied for this 12AB for 5 years. Now, going by the law, they had got this registration till 31st March 2026. Most of the organizations will fall into this category. Now, if we read the law and we break it down, it's extremely important that all the organizations who have this particular deadline of 31st March 2026, they must and they should file an online application through Form 10AB before 30th September 2025, which is this month that we're talking about. So, what will happen is that all the organizations who had applied in 2021 because of introduction of Section 12AB, they will have to apply for renewal, else the renewal will not be renewed. The registration will not be renewed. So please keep that in mind that this is what the timeline is at this point. Look at your form. You get, when you file a Form 10AB, you get a Form 10AC. In that, it's clearly written what the registration period is. And just take 6 months before the expiry of that particular registration financial year. And normally we've seen as 31st March 2026. So this is where at least 12A, 12AA, and 12AB is in the picture.
Yeah, I mean, I think this webinar has actually, this skill lab has actually been on a right time when you are saying that 6 months before means that you have to start your renewal process in this particular month. So I think it will be useful for participants to get that information. Now, I have a following up question, Ritu, to this, because right now the validity is for 5 years and it's not a lifelong validity. So can you tell us some of the circumstances wherein the registration, this particular registration, can be cancelled?
Yeah, that's also extremely important. And why I say it important is for the first time, I think they have also, the income tax law has also been very clear on specific violations, which gives the assessing officer the authority to cancel the registration. And I want to spend a little time on those specified violations that the income tax has mentioned, which, which enables any assessing officer to have the right that you can cancel the registration. One of them, and it's something that we have seen in a common practice that people end up missing out, is one of the specified violation is utilization of the income. That means whatever funds that we're getting for an object which is outside the objects mentioned in the trust deed or MOA. Now, this may come across that, okay, jo bhi hum kar rahe hai as an organization, whatever we are doing, it is been doing for so many years, and this is our program and this is what we want to emphasize on. I would strongly suggest every organization to have a practice of, again, going back to your incorporation papers, which could be the trust deed or the MOA, the memorandum of association here, is that look at what objects have been stated down. What are the main objects in your deed for which you have got the registration? You have to ensure that in real practical life, what you're spending the money on is something that's mentioned in the trust deed. So just to give you an example, that if a trust is being formed, say 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and if at that time they had a very narrow main objects written, and over the years, with the change in the management, with the change in the leadership, the work is still from a charitable side, but there is a turn in it. Say it was initially focused only on education, but now you would want to spread more, apart from education, maybe concentrate on relief of poor or any other objects. If it is not part of the trust deed and you're doing something which is still charitable in nature, calls for one of the specified violation that an organization is doing. So it is important for everyone to just have this practice of revisiting. There is a provision where you can modify the trust deed or the MOA. It's a separate process. And I'm not saying that it is extremely straightforward, but it is worth doing it because you only want to, continue doing the work that you're focusing on. And that is the way, that is the correct method, I would say, is that look and modify the deed if required. I'll quickly go through. There are a few other points that calls for the specified violation upon which your registration may be cancelled. Few of the things is like non-maintenance of separate books of accounts in case of incidental business. So anytime you talk about some, business being running out along with the charitable work, or we call it sometimes even the revenue generating activities, right? Just to be on a very conservative side, it's best to have separate books of accounts as much as possible. Carrying out any activity that is not genuine, carrying on an activity in violation of the conditions that you get when you register under Section 12AB. So I had mentioned about the Form 10AC. This is what you get when you file the Form 10AB for the renewal. So there are certain conditions you may, and everyone should go through the conditions that they have mentioned. They are still very generic in lines with what they have said, but awareness goes a long way. So mention, if you feel there's any violation coming from that perspective, then revisit and maybe understand whether do you want to change something so that this is not a violation anymore. One of the most important thing that's come up now is non-compliance with the requirements of any other law. Now, this is extremely broad, extremely open for an assessing officer to get this authority. And why we're saying is because an organization will have to not only look at income tax, but they're also looking at FCRA, they're also looking at CSR, they're also looking at, say, certain labor laws. This particular specified violation is simply saying that non-compliance with the requirements of any other law. So all the more reasons for organizations to be aware of what are the rules, regulations, and compliances one must follow, what are the things that are mandatory, and I think have a strategy around it, that there's someone who's looking after it to make sure that there is at least these kind of non-compliances are something that we can avoid. Few others that are left, our application for registration were found not to be complete or contained false or incorrect information. I am mentioning this because right now is a phase where a lot of organizations are filling in this renewal form. I think it's one of those forms where you don't want any inadvertent mistake or anything that's been missed out in a hurry to file this form, because if it is incomplete or if it contains the wrong information, is enough grounds for someone to say that, I want to cancel it. They will give you a show cause notice. It's not like it's going to be an instant, cancellation, but it will lead to more and more back and forth with the assessing officers. And utilization of income towards any, private religious purposes which do not overall benefit the public is something that they're called out for. So these are few things which are very, very specifically mentioned in the law, which will entail cancellation if done.
Yeah, thanks, Ritu. Actually, that sets the technical clarity. Now, I have one question with Hershey, and we would like to understand from you from the operational standpoint, what challenges you have seen or you have observed when these organization, non-profit organization, they move from 12A to 12AB?
Yeah. No, see, actually, the thing is that if I talk about the large organizations who have the access to the technical input from experts or professionals, so they are able to manage these such changes. But the major problem comes when the grassroots, when they're working, especially those are far away from line of communication. So they find it very difficult when these frequent changes are taking place. Now, say when you talk about 5-year thing, it came suddenly those year, and it just like FCRA renewal, it becomes income tax renewal, and there are certain conditions under which you have to do that. But many organizations, if you see in our membership also, we have a grassroots organizations working in the remote location of Jharkhand or Chhattisgarh. They don't have access to information. I think for that, it becomes very challenging for them to get the updated information technically and practically. See, one thing is that nowadays in the age of internet, you can get that information on internet, but how to see that operationally in the organization, that is very challenging. That how to do that. Like for example, now it says, as Ritu was rightly saying, the blanket, a power which is given to assessing officer, it is with the I think income tax commissioner, that if they see any law is violated, they can cancel your, income tax registration. Now it is, and if you ask them why they have done so, they say because nowadays when you see that organization is losing their FCRA or denied their FCRA, immediately income tax notice also comes to them. Secondly, we also see that there are labor laws like Provident Fund or ESI, whatever is applicable, is sometimes on the last on the priority of the organization. So that way it is very challenging when they move from one to different thing. And secondly, I think also people should understand very clearly that they should feel what is Section 215 actually says, under which they are defined. Because there are so many, arms of Section 215, most of us are following under the last arm. And that again is I would say, very diluted. Then you have to always argue when you go for assessment, because 10 or 215 ka last wala says any other socially useful purpose. So the income tax assessor, jo inspector hota, he says, tell us how your cup of tea is linked with your mission. You have to define that. So I think that is very important. And I must say that in the end that it is very important for organizations to understand the law, because ignorance of the law is not an excuse nowadays. So that's my thank you.
Yeah, on these lines only, Harshi, because like even now, Section 80G also has a validity of 5 years. So on those lines, I want to understand like when SPOs or maybe the non-profit organizations, they are in the process of their renewal, how they should ensure a healthy relationship or maintain a transparency in the relationship with donors. So if you can, yeah.
See that this, if you said, now you listed a question according to the origin or life cycle of the organization. How we form organization, that is very important. When we form, see, there are two types of method under which organizations are formed in our sector. One is those through evolving model. They become activists, they start working, and then they form into organization. They look for identity. For identity, they might go to registration in various types, so like society, trust, or section, this under Companies Act. So that is one flow which goes. But here, what happens is that you need money for that. You need some donors for that. In ATG has a specific, it's very important law in the sense because not only donors, transparency is needed in the Income Tax Act, it is also needed in the FCRA Act. And secondly, in new income tax regime, I don't know what will happen to ATG. Because that is also a challenge, that if there is no benefit, because many people, they give donation, we get two types of donation in our sector. One, we get from those who are professional donors like companies or high net worth individuals, even income tax pays like under corporate giving, the staff gives, and they all look for benefit under ATG. But second type of donation what we give to temples and wo dabbe mein dal diya, in which we don't need any ATG tax, income tax exemption. But in social sector, it is very important for us that how to, and income tax law says that there is need to transparency. You need to know who is giving you that money. If you mix FCRA income tax, it says that okay, donor का पता लगाओ if it's an Indian citizen or a foreign citizen. क्यों पैसा दिया, उसका PAN card क्या है, number. All those things are needed, I think. That's why I think it's very challenging in today's times when the resource generation is becoming difficult. You are looking for all type of sources to generate resources, and there are limitations of under Income Tax Act and under FCR Act how to use that. I think for that ATG is a very important, but again it has 5 years legitimacy. आगे क्या होगा, no one knows about it.
Yeah, so I think that's a very insightful point you have made over here. And we have received in this, before I move to our next section, which I had received few questions on GST, but before we move on to that, we have received one question from our audience that they want to confirm that there was a notice, if there was a notice saying that for NGOs with revenues less than 2 crores, is it automatically extended? I think this question is for section 12AB.
हाँ, 5 year old.
5 crores.
Yes,
So
yes.
2 crores ke badle it's 5 crores. And what they're saying is that if the total income of the trust does not exceed 5 crores during each of the preceding 2 years, then the registration is granted for 10 years. However, when you read the law, the way it's been framed, it still comes across that abhi aapko renew, you will have to go for the renewal. You will have to, irrespective of whether you're following below 5 crores or not. At this point, you should go for the renewal. And maybe when they are assessing you, that time the clarity will be there. So unfortunately, we are also waiting for some clarification to come in. But from our understanding and from the risk perspective, that what holding a registration under 12A means to an NGO, we are strongly advising that currently each and every organization who's undergoing this 5-year renewal must file this. And we're hoping that either as we get closer more, and we're already in the month of September, there'll be clarity on how this is going to be determined. But at this point, you should, if you're asking me, then I'm definitely advising that don't take the risk of not filing the renewal. If they may grant the 10 years, but it would be probably after they approve this one.
Yeah, I think it's a good advice one NGO should take. Now, moving to our next section, wherein we have questions pertaining to GST, and we have seen that many organizations, they assume that GST doesn't apply to them. So, Ritu, again, my first question will be to you only. So, could you help our audience understand like how to determine the applicability of GST?
Yes, this is also one of the very common like misconceptions, or I would say awareness perspective, that we get to know that most of the organizations sometimes feel that because they are doing a charitable activity, that GST is not applicable to them. So before I jump into that, I think it's important to understand that GST is it's an indirect tax. It's something that's been imposed on whenever there's a supply of goods or services. So it's very different than the Income Tax Act. So you should think of a GST as a standalone law right now that we're talking about. And what's important to know is that, yes, there is an exemption in the GST, which talks about that if you are registered under Section 12A, like you are holding that particular registration, and you're providing very specified charitable activities, which is also laid down in the GST law. And only both the conditions are true. And this is the only service that you're providing. It's in those circumstances that they say that the GST registration is not applicable. The point to be noted here is that it is there are limited. It's a very exhaustive list of services that they put in as a charitable activity, and it comes with the premise that आप और कुछ भी नहीं कर रहे हो, but खाली वो charitable activities कर रहे हो. So for us, when in our normal, professional services that when we provide and we try to engage with NGOs to know whether GST is applicable to them or not, firstly, we try to, you need to understand whether all the activities where you are charging a fee or you are receiving, say, interest income, and there are certain movements happening with, say, the amount, the money, you need to first understand whether is it following, everything is falling under the charitable activities. From my experience, it's very, very rare that an organization can confidently say that everything is fully exempt. And I want to bring in another concept that people say that jab tak, it's as long as it's less than 20 lakhs, I don't need to worry about GST at all. And when they think of 20 lakhs, they're thinking of, say, service income, any revenue generating income that they're getting. This is where I feel awareness again is important, that GST rule is saying that if the aggregate turnover in a financial year, if that exceeds 20 lakhs and an NGO is making any kind of supply of goods or services, then it is liable to GST. Now, the catch here is, what do you mean by aggregate turnover, right? And in this case, aggregate turnover, it includes all the taxable services that you are, going in for, as well as all the exempt services. And one of the very common exempt services that should be included in your calculation of this aggregate turnover is the interest income. Because from GST's perspective, it is a exempt service that an NGO is getting from the bank, right? So, or the bank, from a bank's perspective, this is something that you should include in your aggregate turnover. So what happens, and I want to just, touch upon this, is that maybe you are doing, say, providing certain services, which is costing you 6 lakhs. However, when you include your interest income throughout your organization, 6 lakhs, and say it was 20, or say 20 lakhs was interest income, you will actually look at overall as a 26 lakh. And on a 26 lakh, when it crosses, you are crossing the limit, and hence you should register from it. So again, there's a lot of nuances out here. This is just a very broad basis of how someone should at least think about the GST law and consider a very professional opinion if you feel that GST is something that you may be liable, to pay for it. Because at the end, it's not related to income tax. It is different. And I think one must do the analysis on whether GST is applicable or not. I wish that there was a very black and white way, but it comes down to truly what services are you providing, and based on that, the GST is going to be applicable.
Okay, yeah, so that's the call I think they have to take along with their professionals they have, and maybe the CAs, what kind of services they are providing. Because most of the time, I have seen that people or the organization, they are engaged into providing livelihood skills. So
Yeah.
how and when it will come into the banner of GST, that's the call they have to take. So now, just to have the perspective from the sector, Harshji, based on your experience, I just want, like, if you can share few insight, what are the common mistakes that these non-profit organizations make in interpreting GST rules? So some of the hints we definitely got from what Ritu said. So if you can further build on that. So
You see, operationally, if you see what Ritu was saying, I think there is another aspect of this. Suppose you have a rent income. Now, in today's times, when there is a resource crunch, organizations are looking for resources from various, कि कहाँ से आ जाए, कहाँ से आ जाए. Many of us have rented the properties. उसका किराया कितना आ रहा है, because that it's like a business income, उस पर GST लगेगा. Secondly, it happens that there are sometimes training programs होते हैं, जैसे उसमें आप फीस चार्ज कर रहे हैं, that is also service you are providing. So if that cross within that limit, then again GST will come. The third thing, again very interesting, is that if you are organizing a मेला, कोई event, poster लगवा दिया आपने किसी के, suppose, and then they say it's a marketing, you are doing a marketing for a company, now लगाओ GST. So there are few things. So for that, I think and another aspect of this is that once you registered under GST, because when GST came, unfortunately, many CAs, as we can and the end of the session, I think all of us will conclude one, that the advice given to CSOs are not always true and correct. तो उस समय क्या हुआ कि I don't know whether it was a fear of CAs or a over excitement or over enthusiasm. Many, or they said जाओ GST में register करवा लो. But once you register under GST, you have to report regularly. So another reporting format comes in the organization. I think we have to have a proper understanding and assessment and the advice कि हम हमारी इनकम कहाँ से आ रही है, how much we are earning, because interest आजकल बहुत कम होता है. It's like कुछ लोग के करंट अकाउंट में भी चले जाते हैं, सेविंग अकाउंट में कुछ पैसा आता है, तो इंटरेस्ट इनकम इज नॉट दैट मच. वेर एवर अदर सोर्स ऑफ इनकम इज वेरी हाई. कई बार होता है किसी ने आपको कंसल्टेंसी मिल गई, and you are doing that consultancy projects, that income again they calculated in that way. So that is a common mistakes which we all do in calculating that what we are doing from our main what we are supposed to do as a charitable activity, and what we are doing activity to support our charitable activity, but it is also income from the business format.
So, yes, I think you have really highlighted the things which are coming up at the execution level or the practical level. So, related to that only, Harshi, do you see any compliance risk that those NPOs will face if they ignore these GST obligations?
Any law in today's times, penalties are very high. They must understand that. And कोई fine भी लगा देगा ना, we don't have even resources to pay that fine. So I think that a risk is there always. And as in the earlier presentation, we were saying violation of one law can have a impact on the other law also. So I think that is a very risky business. And it is unnecessary harassment also, ना. कई बार हम लोग सोचते हैं चलो जाने दो क्या पता लगता है, that way. But no. And totally nowadays data is online. Whatever we are doing is on our income, personal income tax is returns, and our incomes are online. So that way I say risk is very high. They must avoid that. We all must avoid that in the sense.
So, like in your conversation only just now, you said that many times these organizations they don't get correct advices also. So, any practical solution which comes to your mind and you can share with the audience if they are relying on some people and if they are not very sure whether they are getting the correct information or not. So, any practical advice which you would like to give to them?
Best practical advice which I can give, which we also do, all of us follow, is most of the experts who are not that much business minded, they have online webinars, information systems. They should join even the hundreds of WhatsApp groups. They should join those groups, join that association, join that network, so that they get latest information that what is happening. In olden days, when all this electronic revolution was not there, information revolution was not there, by that time information used to reach at the grassroots, काम हो चुका होता था. But now the information flow is very good. I think they must get updated information and not rely on one source of information. They should see 2-3 types of. अभी आप देखिए now, if you see, I was very interestingly observing. Now Ritu is also CA as well as LLB, right? Sanjay Patra is CA LLB. Sanjay Agrawal is CA LLB. Sahu is CA LLB. Most of these are now CA LLB, so we can understand how much close link is there between the law and the financial accountability. So we need, and all of these guys are there today. Naushad Dadrawala in Bombay. So if you are on that side, in South we used to have Shiv Kumar. So we must have access to correct information. That is very important. Cross-check that information.
Yeah, so cross-checking information is a very practical step where we can ensure, yes, we are taking right steps. We have another section, Harshi and Ritu, but before that, I have received one more question. Again, I think it is pertaining to section 12A and ATG only. So one of the person they are asking that their organization is having 12A and ATG certificate up to the assessment year of 26-27. So should they go for renewing it, or what is the right period for that?
Yeah, I'll just quickly say it. When they say assessment year 26-27, it means financial year 25-26, which means the last date is 31st March 2026. And based on that, prior 6 months, we are going back to 30th September 2025. So even for them, 30th September is the last date. So yeah, I would highly, highly urge everyone to do the renewal.
Thanks, Ritu. So, I mean, we have our next questions related to FCRA, and I think it's a very crucial thing. And without coming to the questions of FCRA, she has mentioned the critical aspects of that. So, and especially it is very crucial when when NGOs are receiving foreign funding. And recently we have seen many amendments. So again, Ritu, as usual, my question will be related to technical aspect first. So for all of us, for the benefit of all of us, could you outline the key compliance requirement under FCRA today?
I think before I start, I'll have a disclaimer that I can, whatever the top things that I could think of for something I'm going to say, because in FCRA, I feel like each and every word should be given equal importance. But just from our experience, what are the few things that we have seen that unknowingly sometimes we're making those mistakes, and it's important to know that how do we manage the FCRA compliance. And I think it starts immediately first to think as to why do we have such heavy compliance, and I would say heavy monitoring over FCRA is first an understanding that this law has come into place mainly to regulate the acceptance and utilization of foreign funds coming from like foreign contributions, foreign sources. So the whole law is very protective. It's there to prohibit any kind of activities which are going to harm the national interest. So since it is at that scale, it is reasonable to understand that why there is so much of monitoring and so much of I would say conditions after fulfilling only which you can one receive the foreign funds, and then once you receive it, there is a very specific method in which you can use it. So I think one, if we can understand the intention as to why we have to do this, it helps a lot to really break down what the rules and regulations are and focus on what needs to be done. And the very first part that we feel is very important for the organizations who have the FCI registration is to identify the foreign source. Till date, I think, despite a lot of FAQs being generated, also a lot of conversations have been happening. Sometimes, automatically, when anybody is giving you any kind of funds in a foreign currency, um, somewhere it feels like they directly FCRA, it needs to go in FCRA. But awareness has helped, and I think most important thing is to know the citizenship for an individual or where is it incorporated for the non-individuals, right? So I think have a very strong system on identifying whether the funds that you're receiving are they foreign source or not. Related to that, because your registration is very tight and you have to submit a reason why you want an FCRA certificate, right? So there's a place where you write the purpose for which you will receive the FCRA. They have categories in that. It could be cultural, it could be educational, economic. Extremely important is whenever you receive the foreign funds, you have it documented. It's normally in the form of an MOU or a certain place where individuals also giving, where you have a standard format, where you mention that you are receiving this FCRA fund for XYZ reasons. So there is a specific reason, specific purpose attaching, to it, which enables you also to know that, okay, these funds have to be utilized in this manner. Third very important rule, and this was a change which had an impact on a lot of NGOs, is under FCRA, you cannot sub-grant. So like no sub-granting. And I think this had affected to especially a lot of grassroots level organizations where sometimes, the other bigger organizations may have the FCRA funds and they used to pass it on because to get the reach to foreign donors is also it's not very straightforward. But this is something that is imposed where you cannot do any sub-granting. Idea is that if you're receiving the funds for a specific purpose, the expectation that the government has is that you are also the ones implementing and you have a control on how the funds are being used. So that's where they're coming from. I think I want to call it famous, infamous, however you want to put it, the administration cap that they have, the administrative cost, very important to understand that it is only up to 20% that you can spend on administrative cost. Here also it's a gray area. It's not very black and white as to how do you define what is administrative cost. One has to deeply understand what are the provisions, what are the exceptions, how you are thinking of this person's cost or this particular expense. Is this admin or is this, in other words, program related? And again, the complexity around 20% of what is received and not 20% of what is utilized. These are some nuances that fairly comes into mind when anybody is thinking of FCI. Having said that, obviously you cannot mix the funds. You have to have separate books of accounts. And one of the most important things, file your FC4 returns, because that's one place where if you do not file it, there's a heavy penalty, and it may lead to, conversations of, not, basically either suspending your certificate or holding onto it for a while till you're compounding it. There is a lot of process, and FC4 return is one of the returns where you do not want to miss the due date, which is typically the 30th, 31st December. So when I think of FCRA, yes, there are a lot of things one must keep in mind. But if it is one of those resources that are extremely crucial for your sustainability of the organization, one of the most important sources of funding, I think it's worth investing a good amount of time in building the awareness, building a mechanism and how to maintain this. And once we understand this, it is a bit smoother as compared to how it feels right now.
Yeah, Ritu, but like in what you said, a clear difference between what is foreign contribution and what is local contribution, and it is still stuck in my mind because in one of our past meetings in our compliance program only, I did witness that there were organizations who were some relative who were living in foreign, they were passing money to their relatives who are in India. For instance, a person earning there, and then they are transferring money to their parents to donate to some NGO. So the NGO or the organization was really confused whether, because they were getting money in Indian rupees only, so should it be considered as a foreign contribution or local contribution? And there were a lot of confusions around it, and you have really given a good input to that. It's basically the citizenship or what of a person which is actually the
Yeah.
source of income. So that's a good point where people they can easily distinguish between foreign
Yeah.
currency and or the local contribution. So
Yeah.
like yeah.
Just to add to that, because you refer to it, it's so when in this scenario, right, where somebody, maybe say the son or the daughter is passing the money to the parents, and then the parents are donating. It's again truly the money belongs to whom, right? So if it is example, just thinking out loud, if it is a gift that the child is giving to the parent, ultimately, if the parents are recognizing in the books of accounts, and I'm going a bit technical so that I know that if that money or that fund belongs to the parent, and now it is for them to decide what they have to do, then again it depends on their hands that they are what is their citizenship. However, if it is just a medium, that the parents are just a medium, and it's actually the child who is directing on, where the money needs to go in, then there would be a conversation as to where is this money accounted for, in whose file is it. So there is a lot behind it. If there is a medium through which something is coming in. But if it is a direct one, always look at the citizenship of the incorporation. That would be a validating fact. And as a practice, what we encourage, and we also have a template where whenever you receive amount from an individual, especially, get a declaration from them. Because it's also, what is the intention when you received it? What was the information that you were aware of? And based on that information, you have directed whether it's FCRA or non-FCRA. So a declaration, like a self-declaration from an individual, where we simply state also that are you a citizen of India? If not, which country do you belong to? Because that is the information that needs to come in the FC4 as well. So this is where we feel that we can have a check within that are we doing enough to ensure that the information that's coming to us is validated. We have a proof, and that is why we are moving in the direction that we are.
Thanks, Ritu, for clarifying that. I think building on that, we have received one question. Let me read it out for you. If it's just citizenship for FCRA, that would be easy, but operationally, an Indian citizen currently abroad donates in foreign denominated currency, we could account for it as domestic, but it has to be received in our SBI account, which operatively makes it FCRA.
No, so this is not an FCRA. So if the citizen is Indian, even if it's in foreign currency, it is domestic. It should not come in your FCRA account. And that's a very established law right now, that it is a citizenship of the person who is donating is where you have to account for. It's not the currency in which you're getting. So in this case, it is domestic and it should not be coming in the FCRA.
So yet another question to this, I think FCRA is a concern for many of us. So one person is asking if we visit to foreign for attending the workshop and seminar that is then it is mandatory to inform the MHA for approval.
No, so there is a complication here because there's hospitality that comes in. So if you're receiving money just for staying and something, that is what it has to get reported. But if you're spending the money, again, whose money are you spending? That's a separate part of it. But just because you're spending on outside thing, there is not a specific requirement from an NHA. So you need to understand the difference between hospitality, like a foreign hospitality, where you're getting the money just for the accommodation and all. I think that is where certain permissions are required. But if it is an expense being incurred, then again, is it in furtherance of your objects? There are a lot of other things that will come, not just FCRA, but income tax thing as to why are we spending money outside? Is it benefiting overall, the cause in India? So that'll go in a separate tangent. But as far as FCRA is concerned, the permission is more towards foreign hospitality.
So again, we have two more questions and give me a second. Let me scroll up to read the question out. So there is one question regarding the filling of FC4 annual FCRA return. Currently, there is a technical mistake due to which that organization is not able to correctly fill the utilization part. So there is no provision for deducting the admin expenses and project the correct balance.
You're saying that it's not been submitted yet. So for me, if it has not been submitted, you still have a place of restarting the whole form and doing it. But once if you've submitted, the only way out is to, inform the MHA, reach out to them through an email, let them know, because there is no place of revising the FC form. Once it's submitted, it's submitted. So it depends on which stage are we at. If it is not submitted, then I would advise them to restart because the form is very technically done well because everything gets tallied. So it's the information where thoda mismatch or something must be not in the correct place, and hence there's a mismatch. So yeah, if they've not submitted, it'll be great if they can, restart the form and then find out where the glitch is coming.
Yeah. So I mean, the question which we initially discussed about the some persons sending money to their parents in India. So there is one more question regarding that. So the question is, if someone is sending money to parents in India and out of that spend, parents they are donating, does it need to be declared for source of funds?
So again, when you give a donation from your own income, it's important on how the parents are accounting for this income. When the child is examples, the idea is that this money has to be traced somewhere. So they should record it either is it as a gift from the child, is it as a part of say, maybe there's an income part of it coming in. Now it's recognized in the parents. So they need like the government needs to know this money belongs to whom. So if the parents are not recording this money at all in their returns, I would say it still belongs to the child. And if it is that, then it's from that person's amount, which would be then a foreign source. So if it is very particular, somebody can reach out to me separately, and I would like to then know a lot more details, and we can figure this out. But just from an understanding perspective, as far as the income is recognized in India, and if it belongs to an Indian citizen, then it will not be FCRA.
We have few more questions regarding this, but before that, I would like to take a question with Harshji. Harshji, despite all efforts, you know it very well, a lot of cancellations happened. So, based on experience and observation, I just want to know what were the common reasons for this FCRA cancellations?
See, as I will start from the beginning. Some things which Ritu was also sharing, I would like to highlight those things. One has to understand the reason why FCRA came to this country. Secondly, also one has to understand that what you need to keep eye on. See, most of the laws today are ever evolving law. Things can change overnight, but what you have to keep your records very clear so that tomorrow if something changes, you are within that purview. First thing which he said, source, I think knowing that source of the funding from where it has come, Now, source is having two sorts of sources you can have. One is to find out if it's a foreign or an Indian. Now, if it is Indian, under income tax, you have to have declaration. When someone was asking question about the parents, now if that money is Indian, it will be shown under your income tax return because under PAN card and all those things will come in. If it is a foreign one, now source is like few NRIs who are Indian citizen, they join hands together and then they create a fund in US, say to support their village in say Andhra Pradesh. And they registered that association, say called it they call Telugu Mahasabha or something, and they registered it in US. It becomes a foreign source because the money, even if it is Indians, but it's going to an organization which is registered outside. So that way we have to see that source has to be written in कहाँ से पैसा आ रहा है और कहाँ जा रहा है. That is very important. Even where you are spending it, you need to have documentation for that also. Source भी लिखा हुआ होना चाहिए. Second important question is, which normally lot of people have lost their FCRA, is the mixing of Indian and foreign. कि source आपको clear नहीं है या कभी गलती से you have put some money into your account, Indian money and foreign money got mixed up. That is a very dangerous thing. One has to know that ये source सिर्फ in SBI we should only put foreign money. No Indian money can go there. And then you take to your expenditure account. That whole trail has to be very clear. SBI से आपने निकाल के expenditure account में डाला, utilization account, and then you're doing that expenditure through that account. So there is a clear flow of what they call it tally cost center to show that ऐसे पैसा आया और ऐसे खर्च हो गया. Second is that spend money for the purpose for which you have got it. And if there is any deviation, have permission in writing. If the donor says कि ये मेरा जैसे during COVID, many donors gave flexibility to to address that pandemic. That has to be documented somewhere that you can show that. The second thing I must say that if you see the reason of origin of this law, it came after emergency. And as we have a long history of colonization, we have a fear of foreign hand. हर चीज में foreign hand होता. So after emergency, this law started coming in. In 2009, 2010, after 9/11 and after FATF, it became more updated. I can say that. In FATF, there is only one paragraph which says that charitable organization or non-profits can become a vehicle of money laundering. So we need to protect them. So protect to miss ho gaya. No one is trying to protect us, like training capacity building has gone, but control has started. Okay? So that's why and this problem is not only in India, it is now almost in every country. Nepal has also started with similar law, Pakistan has a similar law, everyone has a similar law. And those who are donor, they have a different perspective. उनके पैसे देने पे कंट्रोल है, हमारा पैसे लेने पे कंट्रोल है. So I think that we have to see. Secondly, why people are losing, because sometimes this small mistakes can create problem. I will give you one example that we have ornamental boards in our organizations. जैसे पहले तो स्लीपिंग बोर्ड है, ornamental board भी आ गया, with which board members have no idea what organization does. Like for example, VANI, like a small network, if I have in my board big shots who have no idea, मैंने उनको बना लिया because it gets to become marketing के लिए काम आ रहा है, and you have a film star or something in many organizations. And when this FCRA renewal situation came, simple darogas and I'm calling it daroga not to underestimate their capacity, but lower level of policemen from intelligence bureau, local police went to investigate कि सर आप बताइए आपकी संस्था क्या करती है, you are in the board. If the person is very big guy, he said, मेरे से मत पूछो, जाके go and ask the CEO. Now that local investigating officer wrote
I think his video
Benami
is
organization. And many organizations lost their FCRA. It's smaller things. Similarly, mixing of those two things, purpose kya hai, when and also very important thing is we have to understand the difference between cancellation and denial. If FCRA is cancelled, then you can't go for new one for 3 years. But if it is denied, then in the same evening you can file for fresh ones. To deny you can rectify the problem, you can immediately file the renewal, a new one basically. And there is no use of, I must tell to people that there is no use of arguing, no use of going to the court, क्योंकि ना ये जाके वहाँ कुछ बताते हैं, and it is then wasting your time only. So these are the few things I think we must keep. And another thing is very important, that what like in sub granting में जो था पहले, we had this model of wholesale and retail वाला. So large organization, like for example, I give you that European Commission के जो proposals होते हैं, they are in millions. Very few organizations in India have a capacity to spend that money alone. So people used to build a consortium and then take that funding and spend all of us साथ में मिलके you do that. Suddenly at one go, sub-granting has been stopped. Now sub-granting stop means that if you receive a foreign money, you can't give to anyone else. I'll give you very concrete example here also, that suppose in our earlier people used to see and say that a charitable organization can transfer its asset to another charitable organization. ये law में था, सबके bylaws में लिखा होगा ये. But now, if that asset is with the foreign money, you can't even give it to any other organization, because then it becomes the sub-granting process. So that we have to very clear, what does the law say, what it says operationally, what is the interpretation, and how we can say that. So I think these things are very important. Like even when you file return in September में जब करेंगे, your audit report has two sections, Indian and foreign, and then consolidated. Foreign one has to be if you are going to FCRA. FCRA is a optional law, it's not a compulsory law. ये अपने गले में हमने खुद ही पट्टा डाला हुआ है. No one comes and say to any organization that go for FCRA registration. We go for that because we get foreign money, right? Otherwise, income tax, registration law, all other laws are compulsory. CSR, Social Stock Exchange, and FCRA are the optional laws. और उसको तैयारी पूरी होनी चाहिए उसके लिए, because that is, and penalties are very high, I must say that. Punishments are very high, क्योंकि अगर FCRA कैंसिल हो जाए तो कई बार आपने देखा होगा many organizations, when if they lose their FCRA and if they are targeted by the government for some whatever activity may be, immediately income tax वाले पीछे पीछे आ जाते हैं. So that that whole scrutiny starts. इधर क्या हुआ, वहाँ क्या खर्च किया, ये क्या खर्च किया. So that is very important. Third thing is that we have also seen many times the organizations which gives you money is not clear about that. They will say हमारा तो इंडियन पैसा है जी, आप कह रहे हो सकता है फॉरेन हो, then how you do that problem. So for that it is very important, as Ritu was saying, have in written from that donor कि ये मेरा पैसा है, this is an Indian or it's a foreign. Make that clause in your agreement with all your donors. If it is individual, ask them to give their copy of the passport. That I think these are very important. That's why people have lost many FCRS के record. अब जैसे एक और आपको issue, I'll tell you one thing, that when we form organization for the formation stage, the small group, the board is very small. किसी के घर पे, since you don't have permanent address, किसी के घर के एड्रेस पे आपने FCRA ले लिया और इनकम टैक्स या आपको रजिस्ट्रेशन किसी घर में, आफ्टर 10-15 years or 20 years or 30 years, you have shifted from that place, and the person who was in charge of that time in the board is no more there, or you have a bad relations. So all the notifications used to go to the old man's house, the older address. So then again gap came in. The gap of earlier, the gap of filing return was also there. कि आपने रिटर्न नहीं डाला, आइए लेके आइए. Now since 2011 we always ask ministry to make it online so that corruption is controlled and everything is in evidence. So please frequently visit your FCRA data, update your returns and see that all returns are listed there. Please see that your address is corrected, your board members data is corrected, so that above board member you can't change your board members more than 50% every year. So these simple things you have to follow. And there are so many interesting things. See, FCRA की problem ये है ना कि actually whenever we take a session in our programs also, it looks as if we are trying to scare people. है ना, लोग डर जाते हैं, मतलब it's like, and sometimes many CAs also, all my apologies to Ritu, they also try to scare people. इतना FCRA का session इसीलिए इतना ज़्यादा, people are so scared, पता नहीं क्या होगा. But it is a very simple law, very simple law. It's always go again, the जिसको कहते हैं the मंत्र ये है, to have a correct information. You should have a correct information. another example, giving a long answer, like following opening account in SBI. When it started, SBI had no idea क्या करना है उनको. And anyway, their lunchtime, they're popular for that. They don't want to work. Sorry if there is anyone from SBI. But there was a problem because it was not clear कि account दिल्ली में खुलेगा कि local level पे खुलेगा. So people are running from pillar to post. What to do now? So at that time, we approached SBI and their person who was in charge at Delhi of that unit. They had an online webinar किया and बताया गया. And we recording of that webinar we gave to all our members so that when they went to SBI और वो कह रहे नहीं होगा तुमको recording सुना दो. I think that is very important. Last thing also here is that we have to keep eye on the type of people who visit your organization to see your FCRA accounts. क्योंकि इस पे हमारी कई बार मिनिस्ट्री से भी we have all had discussions with ministry and they also express the helplessness because they have, as a MHA has not given authorization to any state government to implement FCRA on their behalf. ठीक है? But only thing they have done, the local state government goes there in the name of law and order and asks for all the documentation. So when they come for documentation, please be sure, because these guys don't give any ID, but see that your data is properly, papers are there, कुछ कागज ना निकाल ले कोई भी आके. You have to be very secure, your data has to be very secure, all your expenditure has to be secure. In the first FCRA renew जो law बना था, laws, we did a very interesting thing. We added there the 5-year, the record of only 5 years is needed because we said कर दो, because that was in income tax also, and government ministry agreed to that. So in the first, if you see from 2011 to 2016, it says 5 year only. But now, but practically it means now that 5 year is removed, but practically it means that since the formation of the organization, they can ask for any data. So please keep that data secure with you. They can ask and come and only give them information which they ask for. पूरी दुकान खोल के रखने की जरूरत नहीं होती. So these are the few points which I was long answer, but it's a very interesting law also. Another thing, before you conclude, one question, I don't know whether this question has come. Prior permission category. See, this thing started around those same period, only 2011, 2012, that many donors came under that category. And no one knows about it. Neither donors know, nor the organizations know. Because Government of India, MHA, says that we are not accountable to foreign donors. We are accountable to Indian organizations. So and there's under some section 45 or 46, they can take help from any other department for implementation of law. So what they did, they informed RBI कि इनका जो पैसा आ रहा है, see, under prior permission category, the donor, whenever they send any installment to you, you have to, that has to be cleared by MHA, then only you can spend that money. अब किसी को पता ही नहीं है. And who will do follow up? The receiver वाला नहीं करेगा, the donor will do the follow up. Donor कहाँ विदेश में बैठ के follow up करेगा? So those, I think that crisis was there, that organizations had no idea that who is under that. There are 22 or some organizations were in that category. So पैसा आ रहा है, खर्च हो रहा है, पता भी नहीं चल रहा है. So that's why they started this SBI model also, to control the inflow of the foreign funding. Foreign trip का जहाँ तक बात है, hospitality, actually that clause is for the government officials, lawyer नहीं, sorry, क्या बोलते हैं, judiciary. If they go abroad, funded by some donor, then they have to report to the ministry and to Home Ministry that they are going out, and that's why they need all the hospitality for that. And they have received hospitality. But if we are going and our funding is under any project, that it says that project says that our travel is to be made under that, and we are spending that money as per the authorization, as per the project, as per the plan, then we don't need to worry about. We have to report only. Kyurituj, is that correct?
Yes, yes. In fact, I had a very quick question, Harshji. जब investigating officers, when they come in for any kind of scrutiny, do we, if I was an organization leader example, can I ask for what, like any identity or proof or anything of that sort from them?
Yes, we have right to ask them, but practically no. Why I'm saying so? Because we had this problem. When this whole process started after 2011, once I met the minister, also Home Minister at that time, he was from South India, Mr. Ramchandran. He was a state minister of Home. and in charge of FCRA. So we asked them, sir, why it's done. So because just like you have your confidential papers, we also have confidential papers. He says we have never asked anyone. But ये जब आते हैं ना, actually, see, sitting in Delhi, the situation is different. But when you are working in state of like Northeast or Chhattisgarh or Jharkhand, which is already a very crucial area of operations, so they will come and say, and sometimes they say, report what money you have received, where you are spending. So it becomes an additional reporting format for those organization. कि हमको बताइए, और then they say it's for your safety. So we can ask for the ID, but they deny. They say नहीं, हम तो इंटेलिजेंस वाले हैं. In meetings they come. हमारी मीटिंग में कई बार बैठे होते हैं, वो पहचान में
Yeah.
आ जाते हैं. But they
Okay.
don't tell you the ID. So they are supposed to, but practically नहीं देते.
Got it.
लेकिन ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस पहचानती है उनको.
So, Harshi, I must say the law is definitely interesting, but your way to tell or explain FCRA is also very interesting. So, to take a few more questions which you have received, one is, and any one of you can answer it. It is related to subgranting. So, from FCRA, they are saying that as we have an amended law, you cannot subgrant to another NGO. And the question is, but can you send to an entity like a Section 8 company or a farmer producer company or a organization or maybe SHGs which works in the grassroots for livelihoods?
Should I answer, Rituji? Let me attempt. See
Yes, you go ahead.
the thing is that Section 8 company, Society Registration Act, trust, cooperative, these are identities. ये एक संस्था की आइडेंटिटी होती है. Just like, see, my limited knowledge says that income tax treats everyone same. Then the supplementary documentation, you try to prove that you are a company or a non-profit company. बाकी देखिए, पैन कार्ड उनका भी होता है, आपका भी होता है. So the situation is same, that they are treating you in this category that you are a non-profit organization. Sub-grant says every non-profit organization, whatever format they have to have FCRA registration. And if you have a commercial enterprise, you have a FEMA. So you can't give money to one non-profit organization, cannot give money to other non-profit organization. पहले limitations था from FCRA to non-FCRA. कि आप FCRA and you can't give money to non-FCRA. That was there. Now it is, if you are even FCRA guys can't give money to FCRA guy. So that is the benchmark law. If now the question is, like we have, it's a large organization and we have a partnership, we want to do a workshop, say in Chennai. And how to do that? In good old days, we used to transfer part of money as an advance to local NGO who had a FCRA. So they used to do, because local supplier has no trust कि आप कौन है जी, वानी क्या है, HDM क्या है जी, उनको क्या पता चेन्नई में क्या है वो. So they will not trust anything. So they'd want money, जैसी मीटिंग खत्म हो खाता क्लियर करो. So that was the process, but now that is not allowed. So what we have to do is that you have to take all the bills, all the expenditure in the name of your organization only. Second issue is that how to solve that problem of large funding. Now see, as per law, Indian registered organization can't do the sub-granting. So what they do, like last call from European Union said, which we worked with European Union, said that क्या solution हो सकता है? They said, let the main principal applicant to be a foreign entity. So they take, because all these guys, they will not take pain for Indian CSOs. Na? आपकी घर की problem, you solve it yourself. So what they say, you have a principal applicant from foreign entity like European NGO who takes money from the European Commission, and then they give money to 5 different Indian NGOs as a separate grant to each area. That is the only solution. Otherwise, sub grants are not allowed at all. ठीक है जी, रितु जी, now you can.
And I was like, yeah, no, absolutely, yeah, right. Kabhi, as you said, entity is entity. It's in different ways that you look at it. But ultimately, you cannot be passing on the foreign money to another organization or anything. So in this scenario, you cannot transfer it. Will be constituted as subgranting.
नहीं, एक बार क्या होता है, जो क्वेश्चन ये FAQs है ना, जो FCRA में, ऐसा स्टार्ट में हिंदी ऑल्सो FAQ, In
Yeah.
FAQ at FCRA site, the origin of this is that VANI and FMSF did a series of workshops, the MHA those days. Actually, we ourselves are so creative that we give ideas to the government. है ना?
Yeah.
In those workshops, now the question, on those days, there was no provision of FCRA surrender. So they used to call it cancellation on request. That was the word they used to make. People started saying, हमको चाहिए नहीं अब हम क्या करें? So that clause came. Now one guy stood up and said, I remember in Guwahati workshop, okay, my land is from Indian, my building is foreign money, ले लो आके. You know, these are I think the FCRA has clear provision now that once your FCRA is cancelled, government can take your assets.
Yeah.
It's a very scary thing.
It is.
But if you ask them, they say, ये आपके लिए नहीं है जी, these are for the orphanage है या कोई old age home है, if they lose their FCRA, the NGO says that they will be on the
Yeah, there was a
administration
video.
to take care of that. But now they can do that. Now they have a blanket provision in the act that they can take all the property. It's a scary thing.
It is. It is. I think to that point only we stopped advising people. पहले था कि you can take corpus in FCRA and build something because there's so many donors who are giving unrestricted amount. But now because of this provision of what can happen to your accounts, freeze हो सकता है, how much of accessibility is going to be blocked. It gets a little difficult to advise freely on how to tap into FCRA. So yeah.
I mean, moving on, we have two more questions on this, and I think we can take up given that further questions we have. So one question we have received is, can we receive FCRA funds via crowdfunding portal like 𝐶𝐞𝐫𝐞, and will it come in SBI?
Source.
Yes, go ahead. I think you should tell the practical side of it, Harshji, first.
I think source देखो.
Ritu, you're on mute.
Yeah, I was like, I thought it was my network, but while I think maybe Harshji may be having some network issue here, yes, it is very important to know the source. So if you're confident that जो 𝐶𝐞𝐫 platform है या any other crowdfunding platform है, they are able to segregate very systematically, only then we would recommend. So source is important to identify. अगर आप identify कर सकते हो and there's a confidence there and there's some documentation there, then yeah.
Okay, so actually, Harshi, we lost you. So maybe you can continue where you were. Could you hear us, Harshi?
Yeah, बीच में I think.
I think अभी भी थोड़ा सा it is patchy network we have.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Harshi, are you able to hear us?
No, again his video paused. So maybe while his internet is
नहीं, can you hear me
stabilizing.
now?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can definitely.
I
Yes.
changed it to that. The problem is I changed to hotspot. No, that's right. That Rituji was saying that source is too very important. The others are formats only.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'll take up the next question, which is on like currently one person is saying currently they are paying statutory things like EPF and PT from Indian fund for FCRA and Indian fund. Is it mandatory to pay it separately for FCRA and Indian funds?
From a law perspective, they're very clear that we don't have to mix. So again, it depends on अगर आप FCRA के behalf पे कुछ expenses कर रहे हो, then don't do it. But you can plan this better, right? You can plan that FCRA के expenses, maybe example compliance related जो है वो आप Indian book से ही fund कर रहे हो and not on FCRA. Or you segregate the two. Like PF maybe if you have very specific people जो FC projects पे काम कर रहे हैं, you can have two challans being created, and you can, pay from one FCRA and one non-FCRA. So practically, I'm just saying that from a law perspective, I would say that do not mix for sure. They are very clear on that. That ऐसा नहीं हो कि say domestic is paying on behalf of FCRA and then FCRA funds up domestic may move kare, to balance it out. You can't do that. Like that is definitely not okay. But there are practical ways of managing this. So it comes down to kya quantum hai, ab kya expenses dikha rahe ho. So there are a lot of other variables. But to this question, do not mix it, is how I would put it.
Yeah, and I think similar to that question, we have a next question, which I am getting a hint that you have already responded, but I'll still put before both of you. Would you advise, the question is, would you advise that since FCRA fund and assets purchased with the same can be taken over by the government in case of cancellation or suspension of FCRA? So no capital, real estate or large asset should be purchased with FC?
I wish there was like a straightforward thing, but from a risk perspective, I think Harshdi also mentioned.
See, the thing is कि जो पुरानी organizations हैं, if you see today, I was reading in the newspaper, the second largest land holding in this country is from the church, right? And if you go to the grassroots, earlier the format was that there used to be organization at a trading center. They used to there are many colleges, ITIs, they're made by the foreign money. The institutions were there. Nowadays, anyway, no foreign donors fund you any building. Adhik se adhik, you can buy a car or a scooter or a jeep from the foreign donation. Otherwise, no one gives money for the building. So, but yes, it's the same case of with the foreign grant also. It's not only the asset. Many organizations who have lost their FCRA, the money which was there in their account is frozen. It's neither gone back nor here, it's beach mein. I was jokingly saying in one of the meeting that now the situation is those used to have lots of money, they don't have FCRA. And those who have no money have FCRA. So baat to barabar ho gayi. So that's the asset. If it is part of your project and you have to create asset and if someone gives you money, to karna bana sakte. But you have to be very careful, no one gives that nowadays.
Thanks for sharing your perspective, Harshi. Now, I think I can take a few questions. I do have a questions which I received in the chat box, but they are for the upcoming sections which we want to take up here. So we do have a legal compliance that usually form the part of internal governance and are often taken at less priority with our organizations. So Ritu, for this, when it comes to internal governance, could you highlight some of the aspects or some of the compliances which are usually overlooked, and then what's their impact on these organizations?
Yes, and even my last almost 11 years of experience with the NGOs, most of the times, there is a trend that really central law related hota hai. Say, example, income tax, FCRA, CSR, sometimes GST. I think people awareness is there. People are at least doing or trying their best on being compliant. But कभी-कभी जो employees and state related compliances होते हैं, which I would want to bring emphasis on, say provident fund, profession tax, ESIC, shop and establishment, gratuity. These few things which are not pertaining to say charitable activity, but pertaining to because you're employing, say laborers or you are in a state which has a separate governing law. Many a times उस पे emphasis नहीं हो जाता है, and that's because sometimes awareness is not there that these are also applicable to an NGO. And I think it's also like there are sometimes creative ways that because it's at a cap, right? That say 10 and above, 20 and above. Sometimes inherently होता है कि okay, बहुत ज़्यादा complicated है या I don't want to get into the compliance of it. If I restrict it to a certain number, then it's not eligible. And वो creativeness में कभी-कभी, instead of say calling them out as employees, as a full-time employee, sometimes you may come up with consultants. Sometimes you may come up with say just giving stipends. I'm just giving examples that we have come across that intention is that हम law break नहीं कर रहे हैं. It is still say, I'll give an example of Provident Fund. It's normally like 20 and above जब होते हैं with an organization who's employed as an employer, which is the NGO. You should register yourself with PF and enroll your employees, right? So sometimes you feel like 19 पे हम restrict कर देते हैं full time thing. But it's important to know that because it's related to the labor, right? It's related to the people who are engaged as working as salaries and on wages. If in reality and in actual form, no matter आप क्या disguise में कर रहे हो, right? No matter आप क्या name से बुला रहे हो, if they're actually a permanent employee, yeah, their terms and conditions on their contract letter is very evident कि आप उनको full time person के जैसे hire कर रहे हो, the law has the right to let them know that in essence of the law, आपका, say example, you are at 19 and you have 5 consultants, but in actual they are also full-time employee, they would count it as a 24. And if it is 24, there is nothing that is going to stop them to say that आपको ये applicable था law, so you should have registered, right? With that comes आपने non-compliance किया है, आपका ये penalties है. Sometimes they can go retrospectively, they can call for data, there's scrutiny, and there is an understanding that okay, if you're in existence for 20 years, to what they are going to go back and check the data and give you the penalties in the list of it. So kabhi awareness, because you're not sure the law ka intention kya hai, you feel that okay, fine, I am still being compliant, I don't have on record that number of people that I'm crossing, I'm okay with it. But that's not, again, it goes back to the intention, why the law is there. The law is there to protect the people who are under, payroll. There is a right that the government has created for them. There are certain benefits that the, employees get out of the PF or PT or gratuity, right? So if you go from an intentional perspective, automatically, जो fact रहेगा, if you're getting towards the number, it's instead of running away from it, you rather embrace it and you put in that 1-2 years or the investment efforts, understanding, documentation that ye karna hai, and let's do it the right way, because this goes a long way in sustainability. This goes a long way in scaling up. So up only to a certain extent, maybe you can avoid it, I would say, but eventually, I mean, the law has a right to lift the veil out here. They will look at what truly is the fact that's happening, and uske hisab se they will bring it up. So and another one is gratuity. Like we have NGOs who've been in existence for like 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and there are a lot of people who've been loyal to them and have been working with them. And automatically, from that lens, if they've been employed, if they're with you for 5 years and above, doesn't matter you're an NGO, you will still have to comply with gratuity laws. And gratuity law is applicable to every organization. There is no exception that this is not applicable to them. So what happens is अगर आप वो उसके बारे में नहीं सोच रहे हो, आप उसके लिए funds भी set aside नहीं कर रहे हो. So जब वो hit होता है या जब non-compliance होता है, some things which are then now surfacing up, that time there's a panic that now what do? Because we had not thought of it, we had not kept aside reserves or any funds for it, and you will have to abide by it. And uske upar se penalties and anything that's coming as a non-compliance, it hits a lot of credibility also of that organization, that what was the reason why somebody had not adhered to those compliances. So I mentioned about gratuity, I mentioned about provident fund. Same thing with profession tax. I would advise that if you can look at particular state and unka kya requirements hai, because I am very well versed with Maharashtra ke Mumbai related kya state requirements, and usme hai profession tax you have to pay to a certain extent. It's capped at 2,500 per employee, but you will have to pay for it. Same thing with shop and establishment. Like in Maharashtra, just because you're a charitable organization, you still have to abide by SME. You'll have to register to it. You'll have to put up a place, a placard which is stating, your name, and there are certain requirements that you'll have to do to follow the Maharashtra related SME requirements. So compliance wise, if you go to see and you break it down, once you get the habit of it, it is not so complicated. It is fairly straightforward. There are few returns that every some compliances will be maybe quarterly, monthly, or yearly. You just have to invest that little time to know that क्या compliance is applicable, especially state level पे. Because at a state level, few of the states are maybe exempt. There are few organizations, there are few states where professional tax applicable नहीं हो सकता. So then you automatically know that you don't have to comply with it. So in this manner, I think we have a lot of information on our blogs as well, where we talk about very deeply on what are these compliances and what are the things that one should keep in mind. But in our experience, mostly ये होता है. POSH example, POSH also, it's applicable to every organization. It's not that आप charitable हो तो आपको applicable नहीं है, right? So many a times वो भी miss हो जाता है. Again, आप each law में जाओगे तो technically there are so many points that we can bring it up. But idea is that if you can note it down, that ये सारे है, we ourselves, like we are most of us as CAs in our firm, but anything related to labor law, we still will go to a labor law expert because the labor law is very evolving one. There are a lot of different things that keep coming up, and there is a method in which the returns need to be filed. There is a method in which notices have to be given. So we ourselves also rely on a labor law expert to ensure that क्या करना है. So yes, it comes with a cost. Yes, it is a thing that one should think about and not ignore. But I'm saying it's worth it because at the end it is benefiting one or the other. And in this case, example, ESIC, right? Below certain wage limit, and I think I remember Maharashtra makes 21,000 and below. For that category of remuneration, they are eligible for ESIC, and the benefits then goes to that they can go to few centers which are available for them and avail the benefits out of it. So it's when you say an overall, अगर आप percentage में दिखने जाए, it's if your 100 rupees suppose is there overall, this may not even be 2% or less than that if you think about it. But you ideally have to at least think about it, start working towards it, build that capacity that we can take care of the compliances and consistently then follow it. So these are the few ones that I could think of automatically that many a times, we've seen the tendency of like, let's take it up, if something comes up, then.
Yeah, Ritu. So we do understand that organizations, they want to avoid these compliances. And so, but if we go deeper into the reason for it, so maybe they have this kind of insecurity, how to manage the resources for that. So if you could highlight some of the ways by which they can manage the resources to provide EPF
Yeah.
or ESI or gratuity.
Yeah. No, very valid point. In fact, maybe any of the clients, when we try to advise as well, this comes with an advisory that one, can you list down what is the cost of all of this, right? So today, PF applicable hota hai, gratuity applicable hota hai. Let's do the calculation. Let's understand kya cost dikh raha hai right now. And based on this, what we guide the organization is in your overall organizational budget. This should be a very clear requirement of a fund that is needed. Just the way you ask for a program fund, just the way you say that you want to do XYZ things and uske liye itna cost hai. This cost has to be allocated to each and every program that we are asking for the funds, because without this you are leading to be non-compliant. And I think any donor also has an understanding that this is an expense which is coming to run this organization for the scale at which it is. And it is something that is, black and white, that आपको इतना amount रखना पड़ेगा. Gratuity, for example, right? We advise people that as and when you know क्या liability आ रही है, you set aside funds every year for that, so that in the year when this event is to occur, it's not at that time you'll have to look for that, do we have any amount left? But you will have a gratuity fund, or उसमें से ही you're using it to, spare off that liability. So I would urge strongly that don't run away from the compliance. I think if anything, if you want to scale up in a very organic way, this is going to come up, and embrace it in such a way that this is part of your annual budget. This is something that has been accounted for. There's someone who's doing the calculation. You're getting some experts to get to know where it is. And sometimes agar available nahi ho, it's okay to make an estimate. It's okay to at least start keeping it aside. And from the best of your knowledge, whatever one can do, this should be part of every pitch. This should be part of every amount that's we are asking for, because it's fundamentally required. That's what we advise.
Thanks for that advice. And since you brought that donor into the picture of this question, so Harshi, and you have worked with multiple, or I would say numerous donors, international and national donors. So from the donors' perspective, how do they view such employee welfare compliances in terms of credibility?
See, this is a very difficult question you're asking, I will say that. First of all, I think I will start from the beginning also, that governance also includes the management of your governing board, which is always on the last priority in many organizations. I think that is part of our compliances, that how frequently your board meetings are taking place. Whether you have an actual board, ornamental board, or sleeping board, or family board, how you're treating your board itself. The meetings, the minutes, the resolutions, the ATRs and all those things have been properly documented, because anytime anyone can ask you about that, because it's a legal document. Secondly, I must say that in Maharashtra, the additional thing is that there's a charity commissioner in Gujarat also. Now, in some places, the registrar of societies are not that strict, but in some states they are very strict. कई बार they कहते हैं Delhi, even if you don't report, no one is going to ask you. But if you go to state like Uttar Pradesh, in Northeast, they have a renewal system, another renewal system, like FCRA, income tax. They have a register of societies also have a renewal system. Charity commissioner in Maharashtra, Ritu might be knowing it, I think you are based in Bombay. It started as a helpline service for the CSOs. From helpline, now they have become a very important player. If you want to start any project, you have to report them. Even their reporting date was so fast that they used to say abhi karo, whereas September is the final filing date of income tax. They will say April mein kar do. So I think there are many other institutions which we generally avoid. Secondly, the thing is that we have recently done a study, actually during COVID period. If you see, this problem came out very badly, that most of the frontline workers had no social security. They had no PF, they had no health insurance, they had no life insurance. And the first frontline workers were the people who were providing services to the corona cases, medical ho, oxygen ho, khana ho, sab, and we lost many of them. So we did that study those days, and we came to know that more than we listed जो हमने किया 50 ही कर पाए हम लोग, because the stigma was also there to say that COVID से मरे. And we have recently done a study. We are going to share that study we have done in India and Nepal, the status of social activists, the health insurance and their social security. We don't have any social security for them. Why it is been compromised? That India is the only country, when you discuss with the donors, the first cost which they want to reduce is the administrative cost. They will say project पूरा हो जाना चाहिए. Staff आपका भले जाके गुरुद्वारे में खाना खाए, मतलब they will not say that how much. They will say reduce the salary, they will say reduce the rent, reduce that cost. So that the first, I think, victim is the cost which the Rituji was saying about their insurance, about provident fund. And we always see applicable है तो तभी हम करेंगे. But we must understand that that is the basic thing. I worked in my earlier job in Ahmedabad, textile workers, in Bombay, your dumping ground workers, municipal workers, textile workers. And those industries were not following ESI. And ESI was not paying them, because ESI provides health services as well as financial compensation. And the easiest thing is to give money for accidents, क्योंकि वो दिखता है. और they can compensate, cash compensate, जितने दिन आप ऑफिस नहीं गए उसका पैसा दे दिया. But they had, if you see the budget of ESI before, I think in 90s, the maximum, their income was much higher than their expenditure. So I think we need to see that our people who work with us, who work for us, they get basic services, and there are provisions. ESI है, वर्कमैन कंपनसेशन एक्ट तो हम पे लगता नहीं है, क्योंकि वी आर सुपरवाइजर हो जाते हैं लोग. And even to explore the possibility of our people at the grassroots में, that they get benefit of the other social service schemes for which we provide that scheme to others in the field. जैसे आयुष्मान भारत है. Now, if suppose our grassroots activist is eligible to get that service, provide that service to him. So I think that is very important. And but the reason is that donors generally in Bangladesh, we used to see that the salaries of CSO employees they have this agreement much higher than the government officials. In our country, if you see, if you go to income tax commissioner and they will say, "Itni salary lete ho," or they will say, "Why you work if there is no profit?" Many of my classmates become commissioners and all those, and they sometimes they fail to understand that why these guys are working if there is no profit. And we say that we are not profit making, but we are not neither loss making. And we are not supposed to distribute the profit with the board members. But those who work for us, they are supposed to get their salaries and wages. And that has to be made understood to the donors also. Secondly, अगर आप देखो कई studies ये भी हुई हैं that when money starts flowing from the principal donor from the West, the overhead cost gets reduced at every stage. तो आते आते actually for the organization, the overhead cost is gone. It's only project cost which is remained there. I think, but we have to make a basic principle that how we can provide those services, how we can negotiate with the donors and see that basic. And under the law, it is very important to do that. Under the law, it is very important that our staff gets all the services. All those working under contract, we are the principal employers. Again, we are accountable for that. I think that is very important. That has to be seen. लोग मैं देख रहा हूँ आजकल, we came across many organizations where people have worked for their whole life and now they are retiring at the age of 60, 65 and they have nothing. तो क्योंकि दिया ही नहीं social security पे. I think that is very important not from the compliances point of view, from humanitarian point of view also it is very important. And we must see it becomes part of our budgeting, it becomes part of our expenditure also. Maybe. Thank you.
Thanks, Harshi. And I think we have received a few questions on this. I'll take, I think we can take two questions on this. So the first question is, if we are paying contract to government school teachers and we sign a contract with them every year, do we still have to pay EPO for them and their salaries are 20K per month?
Yeah, I think here also it's important to know what their true nature is, right? Is it actually on a contractual level, or is it that they're full-time, employees, and it's just the form, instead of calling them as employees, they are contractual, people or professionals. So there is a lot of other side of it that truly what it is. I would want to ask them that if they are as dedicated resources to do this, then there is a good chance that they may fall under a full-time employee. But again, if somebody is doing similar kind of professional services to multiple organizations and they are as contractual basis, then yes, then I would not call them as payroll or employees, and then they will not under PPF. So I think it's also it's a little bit subjective, I would say. But it depends. If the person is dedicated to you and have committed, X number of years, what else is there to defend that they are not employees?
Okay.
नहीं इसमें ये हो रहा है, just I'll add one more point that in the large organization, because of volume, they provide good health insurance scheme also, they're good investment in that. But the problem comes when the organization is very small. The budgets are very small. And there is like if we're trying to find out, like Institute of Cost Accountants, they have a scheme that all their members, they give that contribution and the insurance is given to them. In our sector, we don't have that. Actually, when you go and talk to insurance companies, they say that there is not fixed the employer is not fixed. Then who will give the installment for that? The employer part kaun dega, employee part kaun dega. I think there's a lot of practical problems which this sector has about the tenure and about the resources. I think that has to be addressed. But otherwise, there are schemes we can talk to, like even NFI has come out with one scheme of social security.
Yeah. So, I mean, with this only, we have another question. If an organization has a group medical insurance policy, so it is mandatory to deduct ESIC of employees.
I mean, so with my limited experience of ESIC, I just want to say that if it's applicable, if there is somebody who's below 21,000 and the just criteria hote hai, if it is still like left to be addressed, then ESIC continue karna padega. Because they have, I think every state has a very specific way to look at what is required to be done. So I know in Maharashtra example, if anybody 21,000, and I think it's 25,000 if I'm not mistaken for someone with disability, and if they are or there is like it's supposed to be if it's a factory based, there are certain conditions, and if you fulfill into that, then you will have to do it for 1 year, I see. Otherwise, it's a voluntary thing. I think this is great if they're doing a group insurance thing. So, and hence I said it's state subjective. So, I think it's important to look at that particular state requirement and then answer this.
All right. So I think we have one more question which is related to Maharashtra state only. And they are saying that their organization provides education, skill development, and livelihood training to targeted population. And when they approached to ESIC department, who confirmed that educational institutions are not covered under ESIC in Maharashtra as of now. So they want to seek advice on that.
Yeah, so I remember for Maharashtra, what we used to check whether one concern was that is this like a seasonal factory or a mine or something, which in their case is not. So the lens that we used to look at is that do you have 10 or more employees? And if it is yes, is there anybody who is like not more than 21,000, right? If anybody who's getting less than 21,000 and if they are in the category of 10 or more employees, then we say that they're covered in the scheme. So this is the trajectory at least that we start to follow and see that kitne cases hote hai and how is it. So it's important for them also to know that do they have anybody who's less than 21,000? Are they more than 10? At least from a Maharashtra perspective, then it is something that they should look into that. Are they still and if they're saying they've reached out to someone to say confirmation, and please get that documented. Please have that opinion, being taken in record, that as to why they are doing this. That's how I would want to go about it.
Yeah, thanks for giving your perspective, Ritu. Right now we have a few more questions, but towards the end, I'll see if I can take up those questions. And for our webinar today, for our skill lab today, I have thought of two more sections. One is we have all talked about sections, we have all talked about acts and laws, but when it comes to the practice level, Ritu, I really want to know how the financial department of these organizations or maybe the finance team can integrate these compliance requirement into their everyday function. So from the practical level or how it can be executed effectively, I really want to know from you.
Yeah, this is why it's so close to my heart that we say so much about compliance. It's like, hey, yeah, this is there, this is there, this is there. And we're expecting NGOs who are like masters at their programs to also master this finance side of it. And I think I'll just quickly share just a little bit that we've written on our blog as well. It's very simplified that actually what happens when we're talking about an organization which is dealing with so much. I'll just show that particular piece. And I think what happens is this. I don't know if you're able to see this one image that I've put up.
Yeah, we
Is
can
this
see
visible?
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens because we're concentrating so much on the program front of it and fundraising and a lot of other stuff. Sometimes at a very nascent stage, most of the organizations who are just starting, they will have this one person who they are confident that finance side manage ho jayega. And that person starts with basic, bookkeeping, entry, accountant. Then the same person gears up to, get the documentation. Same person is dealing with donor related, जो भी updates करने हैं, क्या reports बनानी है. And the same person then gets involved into auditor के requirements क्या है, queries क्या है, payroll processing करना है. I'm just saying that how it normally एक system बन जाता है कि this person can take care of whatever finance required है, reaches up to budgeting and planning as well. Now, over the years, when organizations used to reach out to us and express that, they're dealing with, say, a lot of non-compliance or delays in filing, or they're not getting information on time, auditors are taking way longer because things are not in order. Very quickly, I'll show you what we understood over the years, that what ideal scenario looks like. And when I say ideal, because this grows very organically, and it's very important that everybody should have at least a basic information that when you think of a finance function for an organization, what are the departments that ideally we are addressing? So it starts with, yes, accounts. I think everybody is on top of it because we have to close the books of accounts on a annual basis. There's someone who's auditing, especially with FCRA, CSR. This is something that we see this taken care of. But there is segregation of what is legal and compliance, which is where you will find people who have knowledge should be the ones guiding you, who has some expertise in it, they are the ones guiding you. And you have finance. Finance is where this whole जो data accountant कर रहा है, वो convert होता है to something meaningful information. And this is what gets to your UCs. This is what gets to the donor communication. This is what helps you to know that आपने क्या सोचा था, what you had to spend the money on versus how is it actually happening. So if you start with accounts, then slowly differentiate somebody who's managing the finance, somebody who's managing the legal compliance, it is a lot more smoother for organizations to have, dedicated people to look at certain things. And I'm saying at a small stage, maybe one person is capable of doing it, but as you grow, as you deal with complex, laws, rules, regulations, you need to be aware that segregation kaise karna chahiye. And as you scale up, and you've seen organizations once they start spending, say, from a 2 crore to 5 crore annually, or maybe more and more and more, you will automatically need a head of finance who, if anything, is managing all the three departments that we're talking about, but also is the one who's the face of donor conversations, who's the face of auditors related thing, because they have the knowledge of the legal compliance side, they have the knowledge of actual accounts, kya ho raha hai, and they are in charge of the UC review as well. So the maker checker case I've say this is the head of finance. And yes, at a certain scale, when you feel you're ready with this setup, then a CFO. Typically, a CFO पहले सोचते हैं कि हमको CFO चाहिए, but CFO comes when you have all this background already laid out, because CFO is then able to take a level up then that what are the strategic conversations, what is the budget planning, or what is the strategy that somebody has to have with the program leaders that अगर आपको scale करना है at a different location, different place, what are the few things that one has to look at it. So idea of focus is just that awareness is right now there. As and when you grow, you make this segregation also very gradually and have that undergoing in your finance function. Don't keep this as a resort that jab koi issue aayega ya something surfaces up is only when then I will take care of this. Because this is how most of the clients have reached out to us also when they are in trouble, when there is a lot of urgency and a panic environment. That is when the structuring comes in. But it's a little too late. Only reason I'm saying is because we don't give that much of importance at that point of time. And we feel that kaun fund karega. We feel like, if you put it out there, who's going to actually give me the amount for it, right? But if that awareness hi nahi hai, I will never be able to account for that budget. I will never be able to account for actually saying that, okay, fine, maybe I need, say overall 10 lakh rupees, but at least am I getting portion of it to work on it, in a very concrete way. So we're just saying start small, but at least be aware that आगे जाके in a future scenario, what is it that needs to be done. So I wanted to just share that this has been super helpful over the years, that organizations have started with just one accountant, then they work on this legal compliance part of it, then they work on the finance, then they have someone who's managing it, and then we have the CFO. So yeah, I mean, there's a whole blog of all the responsibilities, roles, regulations. If anybody's interested, we have it on our website. More than happy for someone to look at it.
Yeah, so the website link has been pasted in the chat box. If you want to copy that link and further explore the website, you can do that. And same for the compliance program website page also. So Ritu, I must admit that before I get into all these compliance talks and communication with all experts, I myself was thinking one person as the person who could do everything. But the moment that clarity came in my mind, the way I took that financial management services, it completely changed. So I think, yeah, even that filtration at the mental level is required. It's not only the knowledge part, but how to execute it effectively is also another challenge which many of the organizations they face. Now, as formally, I just want to take up one last question. But before that, I'm also thinking that we can take up the question which we have received in our Q&A section. So, taking up the last question, it is from you, Harshji. Um, Recently, and you have also mentioned that we should think that these are ever evolving laws. So, and in our recently emerging trends, we have been hearing about social stock exchange, and it's a new concept, it's a new trend which has emerged, and I want to hear your views on this social stock exchange, and what kind of opportunities do you see for non-profit organization in this?
See, first of all, I would like to add what Ritu has just now said. One important component in every organization nowadays where we don't keep our, thought process active is the giving a financial training to non-financial people also. Because if there is something wrong done by any project officer or project person spending money in the field, the law is so complicated that it will be very difficult for the finance department to handle it. The firefighting is also not possible. So finance for non-finance, ऐसे trading programs होने चाहिए. I think where we can explain to the non-finance guys also that like I am not a finance guy, but we have learned that thing through practice, through knowledge, to knowing, because that is very important. Secondly, social stock exchange, there are various formats for fundraising actually, and this was given, I think it was 21 or 20. The finance minister said that कि भाई बनाएंगे हम. It was basically to open the market for social sector as a financial market. So it took many years to understand that actually, क्योंकि किसी idea था नहीं, and there are 4 or 5 countries used to have, and nowhere it is working. Everything it is changed. कहीं पे बंद हो गया, कहीं पे formation change हो गया, but as India always does, like what they did in monetization, कि जो बोल दिया तो होना ही है. Here the situation is that basically the process is very simple. First you go for registration in social stock exchange. Registration requires that there are social auditors which are to be registered. देखो उस समय क्या हुआ था कि they thought that since it is a stock exchange, it is to be done by the stock exchange only. So the government of India gave this task to National Stock Exchange. क्या बोलते हैं उसको? National Stock NSE went through that, and they SEBI, because I don't have investment in that field, so I'm confused. So SEBI worked on that. तब SEBI के नज़र में 3-4 लोग ही आते हैं: chartered accountants, cost accountant, company secretaries. So all the 3 associations were got involved in that, and they created a committee under the Tata Trust के जो boss थे उस समय, State Bank Foundation, and they started working on that. So the initial structure, which when it came to VANI, we saw that it was very tilted towards finance. And it says that every organization, suppose VANI wants to write registered under social stock exchange, first we have to get ourselves audited. Our impact audit has to be done. Impact assessment has to be done. Who will do that? For that they had that there will be auditors, social or impact auditors will be, अब उसका नाम impact assessors रखा है इन लोगों ने. They will do that. For that they have to be trained. So now if you see IAS से लेके हवलदार तक की training, their coaching centers. So that coaching standard started, and the initial structure had chartered accountants, financial person, social sector के लोग missing थे. So now they wanted that social sector के लोग नहीं आएंगे तो चलेगा कैसे? Because the component is both. So that says that to be a social auditor, you have to pass a simple exam, which is conducted by SEBI and all those. If you clear that, then individuals can't be a social assessor. Impact assessment company करेगी, a group has to be formed, and that group has to be any organization who registered itself as the assessment organization has to have experience of working on similar thing, and it must have a composition of financial auditors as well as social auditors. So only they can do the assessment of the organization. So the process is that if we want to register ourselves, we will get that auditing done of our organization. Based on that auditing report, we have to register it in social stock exchange. It can be in Bombay में जो है Bombay Stock Exchange or a national stock exchange. Almost procedure same. When you register there, it is just like a company when you launch your. So after registration, you have to launch an idea that this is my idea. I want to generate resources. Just like if we see that how say Reliance wants to raise money from the market, they come with an idea and they advertise it and the people buy those process, right? Here also similar process is followed, but it gives limited time. In limited time, I think it's 15 days or something, or 7 days, 15 days. I don't remember now, old age. But within those days, you have to generate that resources. तो register जिन लोगों ने किया है, they are scared कि can we have like 7 days. So can they have a, how can you generate that much money in 7 days? In normal commercial enterprise, there is a formation of newspapers. अब newspaper में निकाल देते हैं, वो over subscribe हो जाता है. What we have, we don't have that. Same process is here also. In commercial market, when you launch your project, there you raise money from financial institutions and from individuals. Here it is more like financial institutions. Individuals are behind. We are telling them that let individuals should also be registered here, so that individuals can also fund the project. So if your project is viable and someone likes it, they invest in that project. Guarantee is done by some third party that okay, if that project is done good, we will underwrite that whole cost at that time. So that's how it starts. And now अभी तक क्या हुआ कि it's not taken off that much. उतने लोगों को पैसे मिले नहीं है उसमें actually, क्योंकि see the CSR is old, and the only difference is that in CSR the social activities are defined as per section 215. ठीक है? In social stock exchange, activities are defined under SDGs. 17 यहाँ है, उसका हिसाब वहाँ है. तो almost everything is covered under this. So it will take some time, and we are working with those guys, and we are doing frequent workshops होती हैं. Bombay में भी होती है, they do in those workshops also, that how more and more organization can come. But now the question, till now donors have not shown that interest in that process. They used to write, initially they started tell us about your FCRA status, but it is not foreign money. It is only Indian money. So you don't need to have FCRA in that category. So ये हमारी limited understanding. I can share the presentations which we have from those companies, from Social Stock Exchange. So Rituji, you can tell because you are the chartered accountant is part of that.
Yeah, no, in fact, when I was discussing with Garima as well, it's like, it's a territory that, abhi tak fruitfully nahi hua hai. There's a lot of nuances. And for me, as an advisor to so many NGOs also, I have myself the requirements jo hote, right, to complete your paperwork, financials and everything by a certain date and all. It's going to take some time for a lot of organizations to reach to that point. So I feel it's still a very uncharted territory, let me put it this way. A lot of things, and maybe material, एक बार actually use जो आ रहा है मालूम पड़े, then there'll be more conversations around it. But I think you summed up in terms of the complexity and also just what it is, क्या है, that really well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, so Harshi has really broken down very nicely. It made sense to me also, not from the finance background. Harshi and Ritu, we have a few questions, but considering the time, I think we can take one or two questions. So just reading it out. It's a question from Vivek Kumar Gupta, and he wants to know fees once paid are non-refundable and non-transferable, if this is the terms and condition. How can we make provision for gratuity in the books of account if cash basis is opted? Where we keep the fund for that?
Yeah. Okay. So from a practical side, you want to say something, or I can go from a technical side?
Please go ahead. Please go ahead. It's too much of.
No, so there is a place where people say because it's cash basis, so it's only from an outflow perspective that you can record for it. However, we've seen in practice, and we've helped a lot of organizations where you have created a separate fund, and you have made a movement happening. You could create like a separate bank account. I'll give you an example from a gratuity or insurance perspective. Also, you can reach out to a third party like an LIC or someone else who is keeping your funds safely in a particular account. So you have a record of the funds moving from your organization to another agency who's taking care of it. And it's a well accepted practices that you have deployed the fund, you have used the fund, because it's legally also required for you to have those funds. So I would suggest that if I mean, just because somebody is saying cash basis and that's why you can't do it, I'm saying that is not true. But it's important to have the visibility and traceability of where the funds are and where are they sitting at.
I think that I hope that answers that person's question. One last question for the day, and so the question is: if we construct any asset from FCRA over government property, example land, what will be the consequences after suspension or cancellation of FCRA registration? So
Now, what does that mean by government property?
uh, they have written land. So
Kaise? What
that
is the relationship of that land with the organization? See, like I give you example, like VANI has an office in Dwarka. The land is given to us by DDA many years back. So the land belongs to, technically, it's a land on lease, जो 70-80 years की जो lease रहती है. And on that land, we have constructed a building. Now that building, the mixed money is there, the money is a foreign money as well as our own resources. That is the structure like this. So now, अब ये जो same question आता है, when you, what will happen if the land is taken away by FCRA under this thing. So if that much, if you are targeted so badly, unfortunately, in that case, what they will do, they will not come alone, no? They will come with income tax. So if they take up your charity status, आप तो गए. So that's how they take over that land. So let's not go into that complication. I must say that think positive and keep your record correct, because see, in our system, in every country, we have seen that if government is after you, आप कितना भी compliances कर लो, कुछ ना कुछ तो हो ही जाएगा. So therefore, the question is keep yourself clean, keep your documentation clean, and don't give these ideas to the FCRA department. I will say that. So don't worry. अभी तक किसी का लिया नहीं उन्होंने. JNK में अभी now they have a notification of one organization in Kashmir. Otherwise, they have not taken any institution yet.
all right. So yeah, I think it must have answered his question. So with that, we come to the close of our fourth skill lab, and a very heartfelt thank to our experts Hershey and Ritu for sharing such deep insights. And thank you to our participants also who have been who have joined and they have been engaging with us through questions. We hope this discussion had a clarity and confidence in navigating legal and regulatory compliance with all our participants, and do explore whatever suggestions have come up. I still remember which are there with me. You can visit their website and try to join as many communities as you can, so that at least you can cross check the information. So wishing you all the very best in strengthening the governing practices in your organization. Thank you and have a wonderful evening ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We are also students. We learn from such exercise.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Thank you.
Bye.